Okay, Madam Chair, you can begin.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Okay, there we go. Let me again welcome you to this meeting of the Board of Governors. This is actually the first in-person meeting that we have had in 2 years, which is really hard to believe. Some of us nevertheless had to join remotely, but we really are so pleased once again to be at one of our great campuses for an in-person public meeting. So first, let me ask Sharisa to do a roll call. And let me ask those of us who are on Zoom to unmute our lines now in order to respond to roll call. Okay, Sharisa, go ahead, please.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, you're a little faint, but we can hear you.
Is that better?
A little bit better.
Better?
Go ahead.
Governor Bogle?
Here.
Representative Briggs?
Here.
Governor Gindelsberger?
Present.
Secretary Jones? Designate Tara Williams? Senator Martin?
Here.
Governor Mazur?
Present.
Governor Moskowitz? Designate Tanya Garcia?
Here.
Representative Roy?
Here.
Governor Roberts?
Here.
Senator Schwank?
Here.
Governor Scott?
Here.
Chair Shapiro?
Here?
Governor Skinner?
Here.
Governor Smith?
Here.
Governor Washington?
Here.
Governor Weaver?
Here.
Governor Yeomans?
Here.
Faculty Liaison, Dr. Phillips.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. May I ask everyone who is in the room to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and would somebody please take the responsibility for leading it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, this is our first regular board meeting of the academic year, and we have a very full agenda as we take up some incredibly, very, very important items of business, both today and tomorrow. But first, I do want to thank Millersville University and the staff of the Ware Center for graciously hosting the meeting today. And let me just say, Millersville is in the middle of a very busy week of homecoming activities. But they did not even hesitate when we asked them to host the meeting. So I look forward very much to some welcoming remarks from President Wuba in a few minutes. This fall has marked an important milestone as our universities returned largely to in-person operations and welcomed back thousands of students, faculty, and staff. A huge accomplishment. Again, the ability to pivot and meet the needs as they happen. And people are working together to help provide a healthy, productive, and engaging on-campus experience, even as we continue to take steps to guard against the pandemic. And we all know that the past 18 months have been exhausting physically, emotionally, and in every other way. But we really thank our students, our faculty, and our staff for their hard work, for their perseverance, and with having unbelievable patience, all of us with each other during this time. With regard to our meeting agenda these 2 days, there are a number of items that the board will take up that are critical to our ongoing system redesign effort. So just as a preview, later today, The Student Success Committee will consider a revision to our general education policy that is intended to bring it into alignment with the enhancements we made to our transfer policy in July. And I just want to restate again, we had a lot going on in July as well, obviously. The fact that we passed that transfer policy is really, really important to making it easier and facilitating the ability of students at our community colleges to continue their baccalaureate education at our universities. We want, again, this is part of our effort to make all of our programs as fully accessible as possible. So today we're also going to hear from Dr. Denise Pearson, who is our Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And she is leading the effort to really operationalize that framework throughout the system. DEI, as we, I guess, shorten it, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a framework that is a sine qua non at this point to our system redesign because it is imperative that the PASHE of today and tomorrow is a system that works for everybody and welcomes everybody and embraces everybody and supports everybody with a common good of increasing higher education in the Commonwealth and workforce readiness. So we're going to end today's session with a discussion about newly available student data that sheds some light on how the state system degree can be a catalyst for social mobility. Again, it's all tied together because that is our goal, is to create social mobility in the Commonwealth, and that's all tied into higher education and workforce completion of higher education and workforce development. And then tomorrow morning, we'll resume the meeting and we'll start with remarks from Chancellor Dan, who will share his insights regarding our progress so far on system redesign and what our priorities are over the next 3 years. And that's going to lay a foundation for our discussion, an action item with regard to the appropriations request that we will send to the governor later this month. And then finally, we'll hear some key highlights from the quarterly report on our university integration efforts in the West and in the Northeast. These reports are required, but I think we'll be very interested to hear how we're doing in terms of the status of our progress on all of our milestones for redesign. We've talked about this before. It bears repeating continually as we go through this process. System redesign continues to roll out. It's not a one and done thing. Each action item that furthers it sets the stage for the next set of actions and decisions that have to be made. And again, the goal in mind is that every Pennsylvanian has the opportunity and the ability and the access to pursue higher education and fulfillment of their career and even personal goals with regard to social mobility. That's what we're here to do. And that's what this is all about. I'm just going to say that again and again, because that's our North Star. As we get into the weeds and the inevitable controversies and bumps along the road come up, I'm always going to pull us back to that North Star. So I really look forward to our conversations over the next 2 days. And I think at this point, we will now turn to our union leaders for any remarks that they may wish to offer today. And so let me first call on Dr. Jamie Martin, who is president of ABSCUF.
Thank you so much. Chairwoman Shapiro, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, university presidents, and guests. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to present remarks on behalf of the nearly 5,000 faculty and coaches that ABSCUF represents. I would like to focus on a number of interrelated issues this afternoon: the enrollments at our universities, the funding of our universities, and the affordability of our universities. Let's start with the first. The enrollment numbers for the current academic year. We learned that enrollment dropped about 5.4% system-wide, and that the decline in enrollment was more significant at some of our universities. After about a 2% decline last year, I'm not surprised to see an ongoing pandemic effect. There may be some students who did not enroll in in-person classes because of concerns about pivoting to online learning. It's possible that some of our students' parents are out of work, or that students may have stayed in the workforce full-time because of the number of jobs available now. It's possible that the uncertainty surrounding the consolidation played a role at the universities involved in this plan, and that retrenchments on our campuses had an impact. But what we are seeing here is similar to what we are seeing nationwide. And I expect that we will see the trend reverse in the next academic year. I'm asking all of us collectively to not push the panic button. If our current and prospective students and their families see us panic, it could have a deleterious effect on next year's enrollments. Act 188 of 1982 was the enabling legislation for the Pennsylvania state system of higher education. This legislation laid out, among other things, the purpose of our universities. The state system of higher education shall be part of the Commonwealth system of higher education. Its purpose shall be to provide high-quality education at the lowest possible cost to the students. To accomplish this mission, the state system must be appropriately funded. The General Assembly must be willing to invest in our students. The support for the state system reached a high water mark in 2010-11 of around $503 million. And then we suffered an 18% appropriations cut from which we are still trying to recover. While we appreciate the funding that we do receive, the fact of the matter is in the last 20 years, support for PASHE has increased by only 1.25%. Not surprisingly, the percentage of the cost of attendance that is covered by those appropriations has decreased dramatically. In 1990, state appropriations covered nearly 75% of the cost of attendance for our students. Last year, that amount dropped to about 24%. Think about that for just a minute. Students are now responsible for 75% of the cost of attendance at our state-owned universities. It's true that the cost of attendance at our universities has outpaced inflation, but the appropriations that PASHE receives have not come close to trending with inflation. In fact, if they had kept pace, the current appropriations should be around $740 million. So what does this mean for the students of our Commonwealth, the ones who were promised by Act 188 the ability to attend a state-owned university and receive a high-quality education at the lowest possible cost? It means that these universities are no longer affordable for them. Can we ponder for a moment what the lack of affordability may mean to them? Does it impact their ability to afford their books or technology? Does it impact their ability to afford to take an unpaid internship that could greatly benefit their career trajectory? Does it impact their ability to afford enough food, to afford to get enough sleep as they work multiple jobs, or to afford to be enrolled full-time? After graduation, does it mean the inability to afford a car, a home, or a family as they pay off mountains of student debt? Affordability can mean many different things to many students, but I firmly believe that this is a contributing factor to our enrollment decline. Most importantly, research shows that the lack of affordability is disproportionately impacting students from primarily low-income backgrounds, students of color, and first-generation students. And these are the students that our system should be serving. We are at an inflection point, and a very important question must be addressed. Are the universities in Pennsylvania state system of higher education state-owned and state-supported universities or not? Pennsylvania ranks 47th out of 50 states in per capita investment in higher education. Again, we are at an inflection point. The state system needs to be adequately funded, or we should stop pretending that we are a state-supported system. I believe that the enrollment decline is the result of a perfect storm. The ongoing pandemic has wreaked havoc, and I think we're witnessing pandemic fatigue among our students. There is uncertainty on some of our campuses, and the fact that our state-owned universities are not adequately funded by the Commonwealth does not help enrollment. When students must take on tens of thousands of dollars of debt, enrolling in our universities is a more difficult financial decision. I am fearful about what is going to happen moving forward if inadequate funding only fuels a self-fulfilling prophecy and a vicious cycle of enrollment decline. Tomorrow, the Chancellor will present to the Board of Governors his recommendation for the appropriations request for PASHE. We hope that he will recommend a significant increase in funding for our universities and for our students, and I hope that the board will support it. As you know, APSCUF has always been a strong advocate for additional funding for the state system, and we will continue that work. And we are willing to work in tandem with the state system to make the case for the need for it. Thank you again for the opportunity to offer remarks today.
Thank you, Dr. Martin, very much. I do not believe, Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have any other remarks from union leaders at this time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We are also holding off on an update from PACT because the PACT is actually meeting for their fall workshop this week and will report back to us. Randy, do we have anybody in the room for public comment?
I'll just ask. If anyone in the room has public comment, please stand and approach the podium. No, Madam Chair, there's no one here for public comment.
All right, thank you. So let me go on then to the consent agenda. We will consider the consent agenda items in one motion unless any member wishes to have an item voted upon separately. If so, please let me know now.
There are no hands raised here, Madam Chair.
Okay, no hands on Zoom? Okay.
Nope.
Very
All good.
good. All right, then let me ask for a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right, thank you. The consent agenda has been passed. Because we got a bit of a late start, and I know some members of the board have some time constraints, I'm actually going to jump on the agenda to go directly to a content item, which is the Student Success Committee meeting. So let me, and please be assured we will return to the other parts of the agenda after we do this committee business. So may I now please hand the virtual gavel to David Mazer so that he can moderate this next session, which will be the Student Success Committee meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, 1 second, Mr. Chairman. I just need to also note that as a reminder to all board members, we always do these committee meetings as part of our full board sessions so that we all can engage and ask questions. But when it comes for a vote by the committee, only Student Success Committee members will be participating in that. Okay. Thank you, David. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. And thank you again, Madam Chair. Carissa, could you please do a roll call vote of the Student Success Committee?
Yes, can you hear me all right? Governor Mazer,
Here.
Governor Moskowitz, Representative Briggs,
Here.
Secretary Ortega, Designee Tanya Garcia,
Here.
Governor Skinner,
Here.
Governor Washington,
Here.
Chair Shapiro.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Carissa. As many of you know, this committee is focused on achieving the system's #1 priority, ensuring all students graduate in a timely manner with a path forward that leads to individual fulfillment and career success. More specifically, the committee's scope is focused on the policies and strategies that will support the universities in enabling student access and success. Today, we will take up item 10A, which I believe is on page 18 of the agenda. It is an update to policy 1993-01-A regarding general education at the state system. The revisions to the policy we are discussing today focus on the evaluation and application of general education credits transferred into and among state system universities. The changes we consider today do no more than bring policy relating to transfer of general education into alignment with revisions to 1991-9-01-A student transfer, which this board approved at its July meeting this past summer. To get us started, I will ask Donna Wilson to provide the committee a brief overview of the proposed updates to the policy. She will also be happy to address any questions you may have. Donna, take it away.
Thank you, Governor Mazur. As you can see on the screen, there are only a few changes, even though you will see quite a bit of red and green on your text. The first change was to add the definition of directed or prescribed general education. The text is not new. It has been in the board policy on academic degrees and the transfer policy for some time. And so we're just reproducing that text in the general education policy, which is appropriate. The second change to conform again to the transfer policy changes is to add a definition of parallel program, to update the language around regional accreditation to align with changes over the last couple of years in the federal Department of Education. And then most of the changes are in section F, where it aligns the language on the transfer of general education with the changes that were approved by the board at the July meeting. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
And board members, you can click the raise hand feature if you have any questions on Zoom. And board members in the room, you can physically raise your hand if you have questions for the chair, since he can't see you.
I will give it a minute or two. Randy, anyone in the room?
Nobody in the room and nobody on Zoom with questions.
All right. Hearing no questions, I will ask if the committee will give a motion for the Board of Governors to approve the revisions to policy 1993-01-A, general education at the state system of higher education universities shown in the board documents. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Randy, anyone in the room?
No hands and nothing on Zoom.
Okay. All those in favor, please recall this is only members of the committee. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. That is our only business for today for the committee. Thank you, committee members. Madam Chair, that concludes our committee actions for the day.
Thank you, Chairman Mazur. Very much appreciate that. Okay, so what we will do next is, because I just like to keep you all on the edge of your seats, we are going to go back to where our agenda flow was before the Student Success Committee action. And it is such an honor to do that because I get to introduce the president of Millersville University to offer his official welcome as the host university for this meeting. And so Dr. Wuba, thank you so very much. I am so sorry I am not there. I can't wait to get to the campus. It's so beautiful. And this is such a lovely time of the year as well. The floor is all yours, and please make a few remarks for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Chancellor Greenstein, members of the Board of Governors, fellow presidents, on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, trustees, and the whole Millersville University community, I extend my sincerest welcome to you and everyone here in person and those joining us online. I want to thank the Chancellor's Office for offering us this opportunity to host this BOG meeting in Lancaster, and my colleagues here who have worked tirelessly to make this meeting possible. As you will soon learn, this facility is arguably one of the best investments that PASHI has made because it was made possible through public funding provided by the state and philanthropy, local benefactors, donors, and community leaders. It is currently supported by seasoned sponsors and donors. My predecessors made this acquisition by a stroke of good luck. And what do I mean by that? As the saying goes, quote, good luck is when opportunity and preparation collide at the right time, end quote. Just to express or explain what I mean by that, let me give you a very brief history of this facility. Up until 2009, Millersville University offered courses downtown at the Liberty Place building. And so the university was searching for a new location to extend the footprint into the core of downtown Lancaster. At that time, this building was being put up by the Pennsylvania Academy of Music. Unfortunately, they couldn't finish the project. So it basically became an opportunity. And my predecessors at that time decided to jump on it so that they could complete the project. And they worked with the local leaders to make that possible. That made Millersville University a part of the cultural renaissance of downtown Lancaster. So why did we purchase this facility and how is it being used? I will give you just 3 quick uses or purposes of this building. It serves as a center of arts and culture for our students and the community at large. It also serves as an academic space, which has helped us to grow our graduate and adult and continuing education programs. And it has allowed the institution to build stronger relationships with the Lancaster community by serving industries and the performing arts. So what has been the outcome of owning this facility? It has actually played an important role in the development of downtown Lancaster as a destination location. It brings visitors and guests from across the region and indeed across the nation. And this contributes towards the vibrancy of our local economy. And it has supported the development of a strong tourism culture. Before I end my brief remarks, I want to talk about how this facility's use aligns with our core values as an institution. Our core values are we often describe them as our epic values. The E stands for exploration. By having this facility, we make it possible during the summer for students K through 12 to come to this facility and use it for various creative work. And this has allowed us to really work with the local community. We have a program here called Music for All. This program is targeted towards underrepresented students and students from low socioeconomic backgrounds who would not otherwise have an opportunity to work with professional musicians. They get to spend the time here during the summer doing that. Public mission. This facility contributes towards the health and the quality of life of people in Lancaster County. Professionalism. By having this facility, we've been able to expose our students to professional performing artists as well as cultural icons. The next core value is inclusion. As an institution, we value inclusion and we make sure that we provide as much opportunities to people from all backgrounds. This facility is open to everyone. We get plays from off-Broadway shows, as well as cultural programs from across the globe. So it's a very inclusive environment. And as you see in the video that I'll be showing shortly, we really make it available to everyone in our community. And finally, the C is compassion. Performances and exhibits that serve the needs of our community often target people by making them aware that we have to be compassionate with each other, especially during this pandemic and unusual times when everybody is on the edge of their seats. Let me end my short introduction or welcome message by just emphasizing the importance of this building in our core mission of education. As I speak now, for this fall semester, We have 581 students taking classes in this building in 37 classes. And for the spring semester, we are scheduled to have 42 courses being taught in this building. So when I say this is a good investment with a high ROI, we are providing education in this facility, but at the same time, making it available to the community. I think that is a good investment for PASHI. So to conclude my introduction or welcome address, I would like to share with you a brief video that we put together. This facility actually celebrated its 10th anniversary last year. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we couldn't get together to have an event here. But this past Saturday we did. And this is an abbreviated version of the video that we shared. It will give you a highlight of how this facility has been used. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity. The World Center is a community asset in cultural enrichment. That's when people from the local community come to shows here. No, it's not only for entertainment, but they actually get enriched by what they learn here.
I think this building and what happens here has certainly arrived. And even if we don't have to change much in the next some years, I think it's in a very, very good place.
The diversity of this building and its use was magnificent. All you needed was a creative mind, because you could never run out of ideas of what this building could mean for the university and for the city and for the county.
Everybody, this is for you. Please come. We have a place for you. And I think last year and every year we give away about 2,000 free tickets, so people who might not be able to afford artist experience can have that opportunity. And our workshops and our visits with artists into the community and college are also always free of charge.
I think the arts definitely fill a need in our lives to do two things. Either one, escape the real world because it's scary these days, or two, to learn more about the real world. So we always tried to program around those things in which we were lifting people up either emotionally or we were lifting them up with educational opportunities.
We feel we fit into the milieu of downtown Lancaster by being the home for the cultural arts and providing a space for really diverse, innovative, unique arts experiences, which is not being provided in any other place in the county.
We watched this go from the AAA building to what you see today.
I always marvel over buildings going up and how they can move so quickly with all there is to do and how they get everything to fit.
The building you see out there is tied into the streetscape, and a number of the horizontal lines in this design were teed up to match to horizontal lines in the Fulton Opera House. So it kept the sense of scale on Prince Street. This is a very special space. And Dr. Cyril Harris, who had worked with Philip Johnson and Alan Ritchie doing acoustical work, he was the best of his time.
He's the one who actually designed the same hall as Metropolitan Opera House in New York, one of the halls in Carnegie. He also designed the Kennedy Center in Washington.
People make art everywhere. Sometimes it's in a dilapidated warehouse or the basement of a church. We find spaces, but the opportunity that our community has had here to have this state-of-the-art facility accessible to us as a community has been such a gem for artists. Walls and validity and beautiful halls to perform in. I think it's such an amazing gift for our community and for artists in general.
We've hired the right people here that have lived up and understood what the university was trying to do with this whole direction. It was not about a building. It was about how a regional public university and the Lancaster community could come together to serve all. My particular interest is with young people. And so to reach out to that aspect of the community was important to Harvey, and I think to the university in some ways. It's a recruitment tool for the university. When we bring young people in here and they see what Millersville is doing, they may want to come here and be students. And in the youth theater program that I run, that has been the case. A number of those young people have gone on to then go to Millersville, and I think they might not have even thought about college beforehand.
It really links Millersville with Lancaster City and all of the events going on in Lancaster City. I feel like we need that connection as a university to the world outside of Millersville.
Can't imagine life without the Ware Center. I remember in the grocery store, people coming up to me and grabbing me by the arm and saying, "Are you that lady?" And I would say, "Which lady?" "That lady at Millersville." Yes. I had an opportunity to go inside the building. I never thought I would be allowed to go in that building. Oh my goodness, my heart, that they feel like this, I belong in this building. This building was meant for me. That's for me the important part of the Ware Center.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
That was really beautiful. Thank you, President Wuba, and thank you again for hosting us and for your warm welcome. We really, really appreciate it. And now it is my honor to welcome back a former board member who is visiting with us today by Zoom. Alex Feefolt was one of our student board members. He was a terrific board member, I want to add. And he graduated from IUP earlier this year. So Alex, we are so glad you are able to join us via Zoom for this occasion. And now please let me read a resolution in your honor. Whereas Alex Feefolt began his service to Pennsylvania's state system of higher education when he joined the Board of Governors as a student member in September 2019, and whereas Alex's remarkable career as a student at Indiana University of Pennsylvania includes serving as president of the Student Government Association and as chapter president of Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity, and whereas Alex can list among his accomplishments membership in the Golden Key International Honor Society and ambassador for the university's history department. And whereas Alex graduated from IUP with dual majors in political science and history with a concentration in pre-law, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Governors proudly recognizes the accomplishments and contributions of Alex Feefolt, celebrates his success, and wishes him nothing but the best in the next chapter of his life. And by voice acclamation, I move approval of this resolution. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Alex, before I ask you to say a few words, may I please turn to President Driscoll at IUP for a few words?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's great to have Alex with us. From how we came to know Alex in his time on the Board of Governors, we know that Mr. Feefolt is an insightful, thoughtful, well-spoken, and wise leader. Well, we are all here to support the learning of students like Alex and tens of thousands more. I think it's safe to say that we have learned at least as much from our time with him. And for that, we are very thankful. A few months ago, Alex passed the gavel to his successor as president of IUP Student Government Association, and I had the privilege of hearing his colleagues talk about him. One pointed out that Alex didn't get a summer break between his first and second years as SGA president. Instead, Alex and his team rolled up their sleeves and implemented remarkable programs to engage and support students in the midst of pandemic, institutional workforce reductions and restructuring, and the painful exposure of our nation's systemic racism. The work was constructive and informed and continued nonstop while Alex was
Mike, we seem to have trouble on Zoom hearing you. You just dropped. Randy, is that something you can check?
Is that better?
I would have to guess it's some of the other sound overriding my beautiful voice, Madam Chair.
You're back. You're back in full-throated loveliness. Please continue.
Let's see. Let's just pick up here. Mr. Feefel did graduate in May with the bachelor's degrees in history and political science, and I am certainly proud to call him an IUP alumnus, and I will continue to be thankful for his partnership as a colleague and leader. Thank you, Alex. And in the words of IUP's founding preceptress, Miss Jane Leonard, I say, go forth, be true, be brave, and be successful. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Madam Chair, and thank you, Alex.
Thank you, President Driscoll. That was terrific. And Alex, would you like to say a few words?
I would. First things first, I'm kind of glad I'm on Zoom because I'm really blushing right now. So the darkness hides the blushing, which really shows a lot. But I'm also disappointed because it would have been nice to see all of you in person again. I've truly enjoyed, and it's been an honor serving on the Board of Governors the past 2 years. And I just want to say a sincere thank you to you all. My education was not only in the classroom, it truly was in great part outside of the classroom. And I would consider you all a major influence on the person that I am today as a student serving on this board. So I truly appreciate that. And I would just like to add that my best wishes go out to the old and new-ish student members of the board. You truly have a huge impact. Make sure that you use that.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Alex. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being with us here today and for being so patient with today's tiny technology issues. So appreciate it. Best of luck. And I hope we'll continue to stay in touch with all of us. Thank you. Now, let me next turn to Dr. Denise Pearson, our Vice Chancellor and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the state system. She is going to provide us for an update with where we are on the DEI framework. And I have to say, Denise, before I turn it over to you, I just think you've been making, you and everybody who's been working on this has been making tremendous progress, and we are, we're getting to be that organization that is fully embracing and supportive, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So please let me turn it over to you now.
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Chairwoman Shapiro, Governors, and Chancellor Greenstein for this opportunity to update everyone on some of the state system's diversity, equity, and inclusion work. The slide that you see on the screen right now presents the 5 strategic priorities the board affirmed as part of the DEI strategic framework presented during the April 15th meeting. I will use our time this afternoon to share information on progress we've made in some of these areas since the July meeting. Overall, and with President's leadership, we continue to work across all universities to co-create a detailed and goal-oriented plan for each of the strategic priorities you see on the screen. We have established and convened a DEI action network comprised of faculty, chief diversity officers, chief information and technology officers, chief academic officers, chief financial officers, chief student affairs officers, and others to advance this foundational work. I can share with you today a few high-level takeaways from a convening that took place on the campus of Shippensburg University, October 3rd through the 5th, in addition to other work occurring across the system. I look forward to bringing our recommendations to the board at a future meeting after they are vetted and endorsed by the president, the presidents, and the chancellor. While we are focusing on all of our strategic priorities, we've made notable progress to move the needle to create inclusive communities, expand curriculum diversity, and build enabling infrastructures. Please be reminded, however, that all of the strategic priorities are connected and they are key to system redesign and sustainability, including enrollment, persistence, and graduation outcomes. Looking at efforts to build inclusive communities, the Working Group on Understanding the First Amendment and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to Improve Campus Climates completed its work this week. And President Long is leading efforts to submit a draft report with recommendations for consideration to the Executive Leadership Group, comprised of presidents and the chancellor, early next week. Big picture, the working group is recommending a portfolio approach to addressing issues of racism and other forms of harassment. The approach is grounded in the educational mission of our universities, but also recognizes the impacts that such incidents have on victims, impacts that impede their progress towards graduation and can have negative effects on their mental health. The portfolio approach entails 3 components at each university that would include expectations, education, and enforcement. To that end, there would be 1, clear statements of expectations that are consistent across the system, intentional education that is not only consistent with our purpose as educators, but remediates and reinforces civic responsibilities. And finally, consistent and enforceable student codes of conduct and system policies effective at each state system university. Again, a full report is forthcoming, but I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the entire working group that committed their time and critical thinking to get us to this point. The group was comprised of faculty, staff, students, and administrators, and they are to be commended for their dedication. Statewide system training, DEI system training for students, faculty, and staff is another effort we've undertaken to improve campus climates. In April of this year, we implemented a statewide DEI training for faculty, staff, and students. Interim reporting on completion rates vary by campus. A full report of completion rates disaggregated by universities will be available at the end of the spring semester. I am proud to say that we have a near 100% completion rate in the Office of the Chancellor. I completed the training as part of a trial, so I am not in that completion reporting. Next, a system-wide climate survey is the last example that I will share that supports our efforts to improve campus climates today. In late January of 2022, we will administer the first ever system-wide climate survey using a third-party vendor to ensure anonymity. Customized surveys will be administered to students, faculty, and staff in an effort to gather important information about how these groups experience the state system and to inform our efforts to make improvements as indicated by the data. The collaboration will be led by the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officers across the system. This is an important first step towards improving campus climates, and I will keep you apprised of what we learn in future meetings. Looking at efforts to achieve greater curriculum diversity, I can report momentum, and I am especially encouraged by conversations with Faculty Council chaired by Dr. Jamie Phillips. Work to develop curriculum that reflects the human, societal, and intellectual diversity that affirms the humanity of our students and prepares all students for the diversity that awaits them in the workplace and beyond is currently underway. Curriculum diversity emerged as a strong priority with concrete recommendations during the DEI Action Network retreat. And I was moved by Dr. Phillips' proclamation that diversity, equity, and inclusion is core to the work of the Faculty Council during this academic year. In support of these efforts, Dr. Kate Akers and her advanced data analytics team created a baseline survey of system-wide academic programs with a DEI lens that provides insights for the work ahead to achieve greater curriculum diversity. Dr. Phillips is here, and I just would like to ask, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I really appreciate that. First, I just want to say that I went to the retreat. It was a 3-day retreat, and it was fantastic. You know, I've been in the system for over 2 decades, and we've been working on DEI, even though we called it different things at different times. And we've always been extremely unsuccessful in achieving goals that we wanted to achieve. And so for the first time, I feel optimistic, right? And I really appreciate it. Hiring Denise was an act of genius. She's a force of nature. You have to have somebody that's going to drive this. The fact that we had so many individuals at the highest levels, provost, CDOs, CIOs, all involved in the workshop, along with faculty members from the Faculty Council, is indicative of just how much effort we're going to put into this. I think that we've got a measurable system, something that has metrics that are available, the baseline that's going to be created where we can tag something as being a diverse major or minor or course, and then associate that with demographic data to see whether or not students taking those classes in those majors and in those minors are progressing at a higher rate than students who are not. While we also input things into that process through professional development of faculty, professional development of staff to make sure that they are bringing new ideas to the courses, new ideas to their campuses, and using those ideas that they learn from other faculty members as a way to provide the positive motion that we need to actually improve things on campuses. So I'm high on what we're doing right now, and this is the goal of the Faculty Council, our primary goal, to try to achieve this over the course of the next couple of years. I'll be done in May as Faculty Council Chair, because that would be only appropriate, right? I've already done this for a couple of years, and we already agreed that I need to move on, right? So somebody else needs to take up the reins. But I will continue on with Faculty Council regardless of that. And the Faculty Council will be moving to try to make sure that this happens. I think we can show growth, I would say, within 5 years. You know, if we fund immediately our FDI programs, our Frederick Douglass programs, we start training faculty up in the ways that we've been talking about, we can demonstrate in a very quantitative fashion success. And that's the goal, and we will achieve that goal.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. So looking at efforts to build enabling infrastructures, I'll start by highlighting the system-wide Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit that will be held. Next slide, Randy, I can take, thank you. I'll start by highlighting the virtual DEI Summit that will take place November 3rd through the 5th. The summit will bring together faculty, students, and staff from across the system, as well as external researchers and practitioners, to engage in timely discussions across a wide range of topics. More than 700 people have already registered for the summit, and more than 200 have registered for the pre-summit webinar with Ijeoma Oluo, author of the best-selling book, So You Want to Talk About Race. I truly hope that governors, trustees, and legislatures will join us too. Registration information is there on the slide, and you can also find registration information on the state system's DEI website. Recognizing that all state system stakeholders have a role to play in advancing DEI for economic, workforce, societal, and moral reasons, I remain intentional about stakeholder engagement. To this end, on Friday, I will participate in the PAC meeting, and I look forward to talking with them about DEI work across the system, as well as exploring ways that they can leverage their roles as trustees to achieve our shared DEI goals. As another example of critical stakeholder engagement, a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to a meeting of state system alumni to listen to their concerns and to share some of the promising actions taking place across the system. We have to remember that alumni are important stakeholders, and I was enlightened by the discussion with this group of primarily African-American alumni. I valued the conversation and I hope that they will invite me to a future meeting. In closing, I will close by noting a general consensus taking place around the notion of systemness as an approach to DEI policy and practice. It is a good strategy. We recognize that each campus is unique, but there are some ideas, principles, and practices emerging that are recommended for standardization with the expectation that presidents and their staffs will make adjustments that meet the needs of their campuses. I look forward to ongoing collaboration with my colleagues across the system to develop and fund goal-oriented implementation plans for all of our strategic priorities. The DEI Action Network has begun this work, and we will be excited to share a more complete plan in the near future. It's purposeful also to note that infrastructure building will continue to be informed by an increasingly robust data system. Again, under the leadership of Dr. Kate Akers and institutional researchers across the system, we have begun to take a deeper dive into employee data by bargaining units and disaggregated by race and gender. We are also mining deeper into student data, analyzing the entire pipeline from application to acceptance to enrollment. We already collect data on graduation and persistent rates, and we will continue to use this data and other data, some yet to be identified, to achieve equitable student outcomes and close any opportunity gaps that may emerge. Lastly, I will share that all of the information just presented will be incorporated into a state system 5-year strategic plan built on the framework affirmed in April. This will be a major topic of discussion during the upcoming DEI Board of Advisors meeting. The DEI Board of Advisors is strengthened by the membership of President Aaron Walton and Governor Larry Skinner, and I remain grateful to them for their steadfast guidance and support. So with that, I say, governors, legislatures, presidents, faculty, staff, and chancellor, thank you for your continued support for this most consequential work.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Terrific. You know what, you may have said this, and so please forgive me for asking again, but is the board invited to the pre-summit event and also able to register for the summit? Okay.
And you should have gotten an invitation, and if you haven't, please just let me know. But to the best of my knowledge, everyone received an invitation.
All right, we'll go over that and make sure the board has all the information, because I think that's something that I think all of us should be at least at as much of it as possible. But I think it would be really very educational for us, and congratulations on that turnout so far. That's really amazing. Yeah, thanks again. Okay, to close out our day, we are going to now turn to the Chancellor and Kate Akers, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Advanced Data Analytics, who are going to share some fairly compelling data regarding how our students fare in the marketplace after they graduate from a PASHA university. This is intended also as a prelude to our conversation tomorrow about our system redesign priorities and their impacts on student success. So Dan and Kate, I'm turning over the mic or the virtual gavel to you.
Thanks so much. Let me just a quick introduction. So I have been waiting for this moment for about a year and a half. We had an opportunity through our data ninja, Dr. Akers, to head of our advanced data analytics unit to do something which is pretty unusual. And that is to identify at the student unit level where our students are 1, 3, 5, and 10 years out, and what they're earning, and to really get a sense. And of course, when you have the data, you know who they are, you know where they went. And yes, we treat it with a great deal of respect for personal privacy, et cetera. But you can begin to ask questions about, well, does public education work in the way that we hope it will, right? Is it the engine of economic mobility that we know we need it to be? but economic development. Is it an engine of social mobility that we want it to be? And so you can imagine, I had my first preview of these data about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and was literally trembling with excitement. I get that way around data anyway, but this particular because it is so essential to our mission. So I am not going to steal Kate's thunder, but this is as good as it gets, folks. And if you ever doubted the power of public higher education, I'm going to continue to refer you to this kind of work. So Kate, over to you then to walk us through. And Kate, I believe, is joining us. There she is.
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. I hope that you all can hear me okay.
We can.
Chancellor and those in the Ware Center, just so you know, I can't see you. So if someone's trying to flag me down, you may have to raise your hand or something from that screen.
Yeah, thanks. I alerted Randy to the fact that the camera seems to be off in the room. If maybe somebody could try to take care of that.
All right. Well, Chancellor, thank you so much for that introduction. And I hope that you will continue to be excited about this data and information, and feel free to interrupt, to offer conversation as I go through this information. So the first slide that you're seeing right now, I just want to kind of describe what it is really that you're seeing. We have shown similar data before, but it was really based on aggregate level data, as the Chancellor mentioned, through our really fantastic partnership that we've built that's really adding on to the system's longitudinal data system. This partnership with labor and industry, specifically the Center for Workforce Information and Analysis, or CWIA. This partnership has really allowed us to begin to look at information about the employment and the earnings of our graduates and look at them from a very different lens. So you'll see a couple slides later, as we really are now able to see information about employment and earnings by race, ethnicity, by family income, by Pell eligibility. And we're really now able to see this information longitudinally, and we will continue to add on to that every year. So what you're seeing in front of you is a snapshot of a live dashboard. This interactive dashboard is available right now publicly. It's available by university, and it's also available by student. What we are adding on to that right now as we speak are some additional filters so that you all can see some of the detailed information that I'm going to show you today, specifically around our in-state as compared to out-of-state students, information by race, ethnicity, and those other student groups that we talked about before. So you'll see the kind of groups at the top. So if the words are at the bottom, but I'm not sure how large the screen is for you all. So starting on the left, that's arts and humanities, then business and communication, education, health, social and behavior sciences and human services, that little beaker that you see, that's STEM, and then all of our other programs. And so what this does is this grabs those classification of our instructional programs, or those SIP codes, and brings together groups of them that fall under these broader categories. We can also do this for the more detailed programs as well. The little kind of silhouettes that you see, those are the percentages working from that particular group of programs. The first set are at 3 years after the students graduate, the second at 5 year, and then at 10 year. And then below, the height of the bar indicates the median salary that those individuals are earning. It's important to note that this salary information, I mentioned our partnership with labor and industry. This is for students working within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So this means that they are contributing to the Pennsylvania economy. And as you can see, those percentage of those out, 71% of our graduates are working for our bachelor's degree earners are working in Pennsylvania 3 years out, which, as we look at some fairly comparable information from the few states, from the few systems really that are able to link their earning data to workforce, that's a really high number. So, and it's even higher, as we'll show in a few minutes, for some very specific subgroups. There's also a little dashed line that you can see across that's just giving us kind of an earmark of what the typical earnings are for a high school graduate in Pennsylvania.
So Kate, if I could just, couple of points that I want to make. So the first is, and this is an important point, arts and humanities, social science do just fine. Those who might question it by comparison to other disciplines. All of our students, at least at the median average, are, because they're out earning their high school, what they'd expect as high school graduates, considerably out earning it by 10 years out. They're all paying down their investment in higher education, so that the ROI for them in terms of the cost of their education is paying off, as we can see. So Kate, back to you. I don't know if there's any other questions on this slide. In which case, why not move along?
All right. Yes. So the next slide, and I will not go through this one in detail, but this is specifically for our master's degree earners. So I mentioned you can also sort this information specific to the graduate's level. So we can see this information. So you'll see these wages are slightly higher. The percentage working is slightly lower than that of our bachelor's degree earners. But again, you can see as compared to that high school line, these graduates are all performing, they are all earning much higher than that line, especially as we look actually for master's degree, both at 3, 5, and 10 years out. And then I mentioned the ability to kind of take a slightly deeper dive into the program data. So if you go to the next slide, this is because if we were in an interactive format right now and you did a double click on that arts and humanities group in particular, this would show you kind of those high level areas. And in the dashboard itself, you can hover over each of those nodes and it'll tell you what those specific, yep, I know, I wish that it was interactive right now, but those specific programs. So the one in the top right-hand corner, I can tell you is that is foreign language graduate degree earners. So 73% of them are working in Pennsylvania 5 years after graduation, which again is high when we think about kind of the national comparative information that we have. And then the next one that you see on there, 63% of visual performing arts graduate degree earners are working in Pennsylvania 5 years after graduation. So this type of information can be used, by students, by faculty, by staff at universities. This is, even to this level of detail is all public information. And you can get down into those more specific program areas as well. If you'll keep on heading through. I'm saying Randy. I assume that's who's switching the slides. All right. So I mentioned the ability to kind of take a look at this information for these various groups. So I'm setting our benchmark here at 3 years after graduation. So that's the quickest kind of information that we typically show in terms of employment and earnings for our graduates. We are, for this comparison information, we're specifically looking at all of the data that we have. I think that it's for 10 years of student graduates and putting all of that together. So some of the really important pieces that we wanted to highlight today are what I would call workforce participation. So this is the percent of those graduates that are working here in Pennsylvania. When we look at our students that are Pell eligible, 73% are working in Pennsylvania as compared to 70% for our non-Pell students. And then I'm going to go down to in-state because I'm thinking that, yep, perfect. For our in-state students, this was one of the kind of criticisms that we really had the first time that we started looking at this data. We couldn't pull out our out-of-state students to really see that impact for just students that are native to Pennsylvania in terms of the percentage of those working. And that's at 77% of those in-state students are working as compared to 22% from out of state. So when we're thinking about that, that workforce participation rate and what that really looks like. And then the last group, we specifically wanted to see the impact of our community college transfers to really think about some of the exciting work that's going on there in that partnership. And what we're seeing is that 80% of those PA community college transfer students are working here in Pennsylvania 3 years after graduation. And that's compared to 71% of non-transfer students, so our native freshman students.
And Kate, let me just interject. I think the third column, it's probably supposed to be 5 or 10 years.
I think so too.
Yeah. So assume that's 5 or 10 years, but let me just call a couple things out. If you're interested, like if we're interested in investments in students who are going to work in Pennsylvania, you could do a lot worse than looking at the community college transfer students. And it's fast. I mean, invest in in-state community college and Pell eligible, frankly, in terms of the extent to which they stay in Pennsylvania. The other interesting thing about the transfer is you often hear about, transfer students, don't necessarily have the background that they need to succeed in a four-year institution. And not only do they succeed in the four-year institution, obviously they acquire their BAs or MAs, but they also do quite well in the job market, and they stay in Pennsylvania. So interesting observation there.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, so now we're going to take a slightly different look at this information. So this is coming from that underlying data rather than from the dashboard itself. But as we really began to think about what is this impact, what does it look like in terms of social mobility? What is the state system's role within that? Where do our students end up after they graduate? And so what you're seeing, the height of the bar, that is their, these groups of students, their Pennsylvania annualized earnings. And then the colors of the bars indicate the grouping of the family income bands that we typically use to talk about specifically as a proxy for socioeconomic status. So here you can see that the family income ranges go from 0 to 30,000, that's the dark blue bar, 30 to 48,000, that's gold, all the way up to that purple bar that is 110,000 plus. 110 to 150,000, and then that kind of peach red bar is the highest bracket of over 150,000. And so what you'll see is the real collapsing of these income categories as we look out. So this is specific to bachelor degree students. The average earning of high school graduates, we included that line as well. But you can see this information as it goes up and then along the pathway. So the first set of bars, that's at 3 years after graduation, and then 5 years, and then 10 years after graduation. So at the 10-year graduation, at the 10 years after graduation mark, there is just over an $8,700 gap between the lowest income bracket, who came in, whose families were making between 0 and 30,000, and the highest bracket, which are those with a family income of greater than $150,000. So you can see even that $8,700 gap is still quite a bit smaller than the gap that these students came in based on specifically their family income. The gap between all bachelor's degree graduates and stop outs, which is a group that we haven't put on this chart in particular, but students that come to us and then don't finish at our institutions, it's about $33,000 when we are at 10 years out. They are more similar, but slightly higher than our high school graduate population. But it does, the data and information that we have really shows that the further along an individual is within their post-secondary journey, the higher their wages are, specifically as we begin to look at time periods like 10 years out and beyond. The other thing that I want to say about this data when we're thinking about the relatively kind of proportionalness of these various categories, the first three groups which go up to 75,000. That's just under half of all of our students. So we're talking about a significant number of students that fall within each of these various family income bands. Madam Chair, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. A question and a comment and a question. The comment is that research also demonstrates that there's an evolving effect of higher education and in improving social mobility in terms of other indicators such as health of people living longer, the ability to parent, less use of tobacco and other bad substances. There are all sorts of effects, even beyond social mobility, that are related to the achievement of bachelor level higher education. And I think it's just worth noting that it goes beyond just the ability to earn money, to earn more money. I think that's really important for everyone to really understand. And there's ample data, that backs that up. I'm not making that up at all. The second thing I would ask is, as we get more robust and more intentional about certificates and credential stacking and those kinds of programs, might we see a better social mobility elevation for even the non-completers? The non-completers of a four-year bachelor's.
In that, go ahead. I think that was Dan, or I think that was the Chancellor.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's right. We're a little behind on capturing information about our non-degree folks, but I think that obviously the data show that if you stop out, you still get a little bit of a bump. You can probably do better than you would if you just left high school. But if students, to your point, if students are able at the point of stopping out to accumulate some kind of industry recognized credential, they should get some even more of a bump in the job market. So it is something to watch out for. Yeah.
And Senator Martin has a question.
Thank you. First, this is fascinating data, and I think the more we can share that with the decision makers in terms of funding, I think the better. The question I have in two areas: is there any correlating data related to debt for students matched up with these kind of numbers at all? Because obviously that's a component when if we're comparing just high school graduates or what they'll be, is also how much are they also paying. The second part I'd be interested in knowing if you have that data is for the percentage of students who are enrolled in PASHE from out of state. Is there a percentage of them that are then choosing to be employed and set their roots for that 3, 5, 10-year period in Pennsylvania? Are we able to break that out as well?
Yeah. So the answer to your second question is yes. We had those here. It was about 22% of the out-of-state students who graduate are still here. I guess it was 10 years out. Kate, do we have student debt at the student unit?
Unfortunately, we do not. We only have that data coming in aggregate form. But I think that there's probably some parallels that we can pull whenever we're looking at information like debt compared to our family income groups in particular. That's kind of where my mind's going whenever when we're trying to kind of put those pieces together.
And just what so when we're looking, we didn't do it here, but when we look at these data, there are calculations that we use to see, to what extent and when are students able to realize the return on their investment. And so we factor into that what they're earning over, and I think it goes out. Our data don't go out, but there's some national sources which can take it out, project 40 years. And then you can see based on certain levels of student debt, how long does it take for a student to pay off their debt load. But you can even see here that, the average earning, I think 5 years out is around 50 something thousand, maybe. so the average student debt currently, this is today's students, not 10 years ago students or 5 years ago students, is it about 39,000. So, students are going to be able to pay off their debt at those kind of salary levels, which are going to increase, certainly into their 30s. So you can kind of work out when that crossover point is. And the sad piece here, it is the stop-outs, because the stop-outs often are earning just a little bit above that average earnings of the high school graduates. And those students will often have debt, but they don't get the bump that they would have gotten if they were able to get a degree. So that's really the focal point. And to Cindy's point earlier, if we can find ways to credential those students for the sort of for the competencies they've earned, or frankly to keep them around, and to so that they retain through at least some kind of degree. That's where the real, bump is going to come from. But the power of it, and this is what I did this once at the University of California. This was years ago, and actually I did it once before in a English university, which. And you hope to see this kind of trend, the compression that happens. But, families, these students who come to us and they're, really in the lowest quintile in terms of socioeconomic, the financial position of their families. And then they come out, there's a gap, there's still a gap. And that probably has something to do with the program of studies that they go into. But man, that gap is compressed. It's not gone, but it's almost gone. And you don't find elevators like that. I mean, just think of where else in society. I mean, Peter Thiel will talk about you don't need to go to college because you can be like Peter Thiel and find PayPal or whatever. And maybe that's true for a handful of students, but that kind of mobility is not easily found, especially now. And I don't want to sort of anticipate too much, but you'll see the same effect when we get to race, ethnicity.
And just because it's hard for me to read that last line, is this just based on PASHE data?
Yeah, these are
Just
only
PASHE students. Okay.
PASHE data, PASHE students.
Thank you.
And it goes to a comment that came up earlier. I mean, what are you getting for your investment in any other school? Because you don't know.
I think that I got a note that Tanya had her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
So
welcome.
the other, I didn't want to not say anything about how amazing the data about individuals who go into educator prep programs and the extent to which they stay here in Pennsylvania after they graduate is something that I noticed in recent data that I put together that PDE has. And the past 2 years have seen enrollment increases in individuals pursuing education as a profession. And I want to underscore the fact that the students served by state system institutions, these represent, low income, racial and ethnic diversity. And I want to emphasize the ethnic part of my statement there because, we have rural students, suburban students, we have students in urban areas, and the diversity by race, ethnicity, and by socioeconomic status is really, really important for us to take note of as we prepare the next generation of educators across the Commonwealth. And I want to just state the obvious that the PASHE institutions began as the normal schools in Pennsylvania, teacher training programs, and this is, I see, one of the biggest values of the role of the state system universities in not only the teacher and educator workforce, but as the engines of Pennsylvania's talent system in our ability to develop young people in the K-12 system to enter the jobs that are going to be fueling our economy for years to come. And so the educator stats that Kate and Dan have presented are extremely good news for us to seize upon and to keep promoting, because we have major teacher shortages We have not seen any of the data yet on the impact of the pandemic on burnout by teachers and school leaders. And so I want to just underscore how important it is for us to continue to see these trends in order for us to be able to educate our young people. Thank you.
That's great. Kate, if you maybe on the strength that if you wanted to hop not to the next slide, but 2 slides out where we cross race, ethnicity, and income. And as we're hopping there, I do want to point out, these are not obviously astronomical salaries. They're not the kind of salaries you'd expect to see someone earning after 10 years out, after they've graduated from an elite and highly selective institution. But, to be blunt about it, elite and highly selective institutions by definition are only educating a small fraction of the population. What you're seeing here is that public education is driving the bulk of the workforce need by taking students from, low and middle income families, which is the bulk of our population, and landing them in the kinds of, jobs and the kinds of careers that our society needs, to function upon. So it's, probably undervalued sector of higher education. I would the less selective institutions, community colleges, 4-year not less selective institutions. That's where 65% of the students are, and the vast majority of the kind of employees of the future. So, Kate, do you want to take us through how we cross race, ethnicity, and income?
Absolutely. So the slide before was just showing just the race ethnicity component. So thinking about, looking at also that that impact of family income as the student comes into our universities and really taking that into account. So here, the colors of the bars indicate various race ethnicity groups. So I'm going to read those to you very quickly, knowing that you guys can't see them probably. But the dark blue is American Indian or Alaska Native. Gold is Asian. Gray, Black or African American. Light blue is Hispanic. Kind of a peach pink color, 2 or more races. The dark red is unknown. And then the darkest gray there that you see are students indicated as white. So we left these separately as opposed to grouping them by that underrepresented minority category. So we could see the various variations. And then you'll see that we're looking at 5 years out. So if we were to look at this information at 10 years out, as we know from the previous slides, the salaries are higher at that 10-year mark. But unfortunately, because we really value the privacy of the information that we're showing, we really get into some small counts. So we're sticking with the 5-year employment outcomes. And then the groupings along the bottom are the same that you saw on that first slide. So you've got 0 to 30, 30 to 48. And then all the way up to greater than 150. So you can see kind of how these pieces vary throughout the various family income groupings. And then remembering that this is all of these segmented at 5 years of employment outcomes. There's one really important note that as we went through this data in particular, as we're thinking about social mobility, so thinking about where these students are whenever they come in, and then, where they are at either a 5-year or a 10-year point out there. And so one thing that we found is that for every 3 out of 4 of our underrepresented minority students, so specifically bachelor degree earners, who came in with a family income of less than that of the high school graduate line that you're seeing there, 3 out of 4 of them were above that at 10 years out. So showing that real movement that we're seeing for, in this case, 75% of these students that are coming in below that with family earnings of below that of the average high school graduate, 3 out of 4 were above that at 10 years after graduation. And that's for one person. The family income is however that's, captured, however that student's providing that information, but could be 1 or 2 earners or more from a family. And then comparing that to a single person's income at 10 years out. So we thought that that was a really powerful statement to be able to think about the real movement that we're seeing in income and looking at that information for those specific demographic groups.
Kate, thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions or other.
Yeah, right. Any questions or comments? That was a great presentation.
And board members, if you on Zoom, if you have any questions, just click the raise hand feature.
Right.
Okay, you're clear.
I don't see any. Okay. Well, thank you again, Kate. That was a really great presentation. And I think it just really serves to ground us again in what this is all about and what we're trying to achieve, and really presents the data to make us understand not only how important this is, but the fact that, you know, we keep this as our guiding principle. This is what we're here to make happen, and actually make those data even better with regard to you know, what a degree from Apache University can bring, not only in terms of social mobility, career, and job, but really just improvements completely with life and family and health and citizenship. So it's a very, very important presentation, and I thank you for it. And thank you, Chancellor, as well. Okay, I don't believe we have any further business today. Randy, before I say another word, do you concur with that?
You are correct, Madam Chair. No new business or other business for today.
All right, that's fine. So in that case, we stand in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I wish everybody a pleasant evening. And again, for those of you who are there at Millersville, I wish I was with you. We'll be soon next time, and have a great, great evening. Good night, everyone. See you all tomorrow morning for our continuation.
And for board members who are here, there is a short tour that the managers of the space have provided that would take place immediately after this, before your dinner. Thank you.